There's where comments will pop up.
Okay. For both.
Yes. Perfect. All right. All right, we were just checking a few, making sure both platforms were streaming. We are live from the Ankarsrum USA studios. Very excited to join not only our Ankarsrum USA YouTube channel today for this live stream, but also the official Ankarsrum Assistant Instagram account. So I'm sure many of you are joining us from across the ocean in Sweden or parts of Europe. Would love to know where you're joining us from today. It's currently about 1:30 in the afternoon here in the state of Georgia in the United States. And we picked this time so that those of you who follow Ankarsrum in Sweden and in Europe could join in the evening time. That's always the fun part of choosing when to do live events. You should be able to ask questions. Our streaming software has those. I have one of my Ankarsrum USA staff members, Catherine, is here today. She's monitoring those questions. She's right here in the room with me, so she will ask me those questions as we go along. But today we're gonna kind of look at the basic package and what comes with it. I think on Instagram, we have a very small window screen to work with. And so I'm gonna try and stay right here in the center while we go through everything. Want to go over a couple of things that you receive with your Ankarsrum with the basic package. You have your 7-liter or 8-quart stainless steel bowl. You have a dust cover lid that also works great for proofing and rising dough right here in the bowl. This also acts as a fun bowl for many of the optional accessories. So I'm sure we'll do more live videos about those accessories as we progress throughout this year. So that's a fun tool there. You also get a plastic beater bowl, but we'll go over that in a few minutes. Let's go over first your 2 main mixing tools that you're going to use with the stainless steel bowl. You've got a couple of different options. You have the dough roller and the dough knife, or the bowl scraper, as we call it here in the United States a lot of times. So you have your dough roller and your dough knife. These are actually original to the machine from 1940. Back in the 40s, these were actually made out of wood. I've seen them in person and they're very, very cool. And I think we've even posted a picture of them recently on our social media platforms. So definitely go back and check those out. It's very, very interesting. But you have a dough roller and a dough knife or a dough scraper. This is going to be pretty much for everything. If you think about it, from 1940 until 1990, when this machine first entered the United States, this is pretty much what came with the machine. So you used this for cakes, cookies, bread dough, all of the things. And I like to tell people, if you're used to using a paddle attachment on that other stand mixer that's on the market, if you're used to using the paddle attachment for a particular recipe, chances are the roller and scraper are going to do a great job for that particular recipe. So if you're trying to decide, oh, okay, I'm used to doing it this way in my old mixer, now I have the Ankarsrum, which tool should I use for mixing? A lot of times the roller and the scraper are going to be a great option, because this is originally what most Swedish families used for everything. So the scraper is going to fit here in the smallest. I'm going to change our view here really quick. We've got a small hole here for the dough scraper and a large hole here for the dough hook. Now we're going to pull up on the pin. We're going to swing the arm over the bowl. And now the pin's gonna go inside the roller, and then the arm is just gonna go back to the side. Now, a lot of times customers will ask me, okay, how do I know where to position the arm and the roller for my particular recipe? A lot of that is going to completely be determined by your recipe, but here are some things that you're gonna look for. The arm is designed to move back and forth with your dough. But what you want to be careful of is you don't want to have the arm and the roller positioned so close to the side that the dough is forcing the arm back and forth in a violent way. So you want it close enough to the side that it's applying gentle pressure to the dough because that's how it kneads the bread dough. But you don't want it so close that the arm, like I said, is violently moving back and forth. So once you get your flour added to your recipe, you're going to adjust the arm and look at the dough and see, okay, what is my roller doing to the dough? Is it applying gentle pressure to the side? And if it is, then that's the perfect location with a little bit of movement. Now, another question we get asked a lot is about the speed on the Ankarsrum and what speed you should be mixing at. I tell people if you think of the speed control knob like a clock, with 12 o'clock being the lowest speed, you're going to typically knead bread dough somewhere between 12 o'clock and 4 o'clock speed. You never really want to knead bread dough higher than a 4 o'clock speed. And for those heavier, stiffer doughs or a large batch, you're typically going to knead on a much lower speed, which will allow the arm to gently move back and forth with the dough. So I would encourage you to go watch our masterclass video on using the dough roller. That is a fantastic resource for learning how to properly set the arm and the roller for your particular recipe. Catherine, just let me know if we have any questions popping up. Oh, so sorry, totally forgot that to plug in the laptop to make sure that our battery doesn't die. So power cord is in my bag right there. You can just set it right up here on the counter. Perfect. So we're gonna get that taken care of. I'll go ahead and talk about the dough hook and then we'll circle back to any questions that you guys might have. So we've got our dough knife here at the side of the bowl. Now we're gonna attach our dough hook. You're still gonna use the dough knife and we're gonna pause really quick while I plug this in. We made sure everything else was plugged up and ready to go except for the laptop. There you go. And it should be on the other side. There we go. Perfect. So dough scraper is still going to fit here, even when we're using our dough hook. Then our dough hook is going to fit in this larger of the two holes. Now, one thing that I want to point out, it's difficult to see in the camera, so I won't change the view, but there should be a small spring and screw down in this larger hole. This is so that you can adjust the height of the dough hook because you want to make sure that the dough hook is not touching the bottom of the bowl, but you also want to make sure that it's low enough that your arm is able to clear the dough knife and your pin is going to go right into that bracket. So just make sure when you unbox your Ankarsrum from the very beginning, just make sure that that spring and that screw is present down in that hole. Now, if it's not present, double check your box. The Ankarsrum Assistant is still to this day made by actual human beings. So if by chance that screw and that spring were not positioned far enough down in the box during transportation, especially across the ocean, on a boat, the vibrations can actually cause that spring and that screw to come loose and fall out in the box. So just double check down in your box, especially underneath those bottom flaps. Make sure that the spring and the screw haven't fallen down in there. And if they have, if you find those in your box, no big deal. You're going to slide the spring over the screw and then you're just going to position it down in that hole. And I would advise to screw it all the way down and then start to loosen it back up, checking the height of your dough hook as you go along. So dough hook's going to fit in the larger of the two holes. You're going to pull up on the pin. You're going to swing the arm over the dough hook and down into the bracket. and then you're just going to tighten your tension knob to position the dough hook in the center of the bowl. Another great resource is our masterclass on the dough hook that will talk about the types of dough that work best with the dough hook, or that the dough hook works best with. There's actually a small misconception with the dough hook for the Ankarsrum. It is not like the dough hook of other traditional stand mixers. If you think about it, with other stand mixers, you have a stationary bowl and you have stationary ingredients, and the dough hook or the paddle or the whisks is moving throughout the ingredients, but the bowl's staying still, the ingredients are staying still. With the Ankarsrum, you have a bowl that's turning and you have ingredients that are turning. So when you have the bowl that's turning, ingredients that are turning, and then you have a stationary hook, the dough is going to come together and mix and knead very differently than what you might be accustomed to coming from a more traditional stand mixer. So we actually recommend small to medium batches can be done with the dough hook, and actually higher hydration doughs work best using the dough hook. And it's because of all these different angles that high hydration silky dough, like the crispy baguette recipe from the recipe book, it gets caught between these angles and it acts more like a Laffy Taffy pull, like a candy pulling machine on those very, very silky doughs. Now, high hydration, low hydration, small batch or large batch, the dough roller does a fantastic job with all of the different varieties of dough. The only thing you're going to change is where you position the arm and the roller and what speed you are mixing at. But check out both of those masterclass videos. I think it will help you better understand
and what speed
the types of dough that work best.
But check out both of those masterclass videos.
And then of course,
I think it will
help
harm
also
and
better
roller
understand
and what
personal
speed
preferences.
the types of dough
Try the
that work
roller.
best. But check out both of those masterclass videos.
And of course,
I think it will harm
also
and
better
roller
understand
and what
Do we have any questions so far about dough roller, dough knife, and which one to use?
No, they're
Okay.
all loving it.
Perfect. We're going to move on to the beater bowl that comes with your basic package. So I'm going to move this off to the side. Now this is a BPA-free Triton plastic beater bowl that you're going to use for egg whites, whipping cream, small batches of cookies, small batches of cake batter and frosting. It comes with 2 different sets of beaters. Now I will tell you, this is probably the biggest point of confusion with the Ankarsrum, because these attachments are very different from what you might be accustomed to. So here's some general tips and tricks and do's and don'ts when it comes to using this particular bowl with these mixing tools. So you have a set of single wire beaters here. This is going to be for very soft cookie dough, and this is also going to be for those cake batters or soft frostings that are just a very small batch. You want to always make sure that you're using completely soft room temperature butter when you're using these beaters for your cookie dough, or and even a pie crust. There's a fantastic pie crust recipe in the recipe book that comes with your Ankarsrum, and it uses completely soft room temperature butter, and it makes a beautiful pie crust. So just the big things to remember: always use completely soft room temperature butter. Use the chocolate chip cookie recipe found in the recipe book as kind of a guide. Compare that recipe to any other cookie recipe that you might be wanting to make. Kind of look at the list of ingredients and kind of use that as a resource to determine, is your recipe larger than the recipe in the cookbook? If it is, probably shouldn't use this bowl. You'll want to use the stainless steel bowl with the roller and scraper. Also ask yourself, is this cookie dough recipe that I want to make heavier than the cookie recipe in the cookbook? Are there more added ingredients like nuts and chocolate chunks and big heavy things that you're going to be adding? If it is heavier or a stiffer cookie dough than what's in our recipe book, then I would definitely suggest using the stainless steel bowl with the roller and scraper. Another fabulous resource is another masterclass video that we have on making cookies, and we go over all of these do's and don'ts. So those are going to be your restrictions with the single wire beaters. So soft cookie dough, not more than 1 recipe worth of our chocolate chip cookie dough recipe found in the cookbook, and nothing heavier than that particular recipe. Always use completely soft, room temperature butter. And then once you start mixing your dry ingredients into your cookie dough, so a very traditional cookie recipe, you're gonna cream your butter and your sugar together. You're probably gonna add your eggs and your flavoring, vanilla, coconut, whatever type of flavoring you're adding. Then you're probably gonna start adding the dry ingredients, the flour mixed with the baking soda, the baking powder, and the salt. So once you start adding those dry ingredients, you want to make sure you are mixing on the absolute lowest speed. Once you get that flour incorporated, and if you're adding chocolate chips here, you're gonna add that in and you're going to mix just until the dough comes together. Once the dough is incorporated, the flour is incorporated, the chocolate chips are incorporated, you wanna make sure that you turn the machine off. One of the most common mistakes that consumers make when they are using this bowl for making cookies is they are mixing on way too high of a speed when they start adding the dry ingredients, and then they mix the cookie dough too long, and what ends up happening is the dough starts getting so thick as it comes together that you run the risk of breaking the beaters, chipping a tooth on this main gear here. And you also run the risk of that massive amount of cookie dough is trying to form a ball, and it's putting unwanted torque on this bowl, and it can cause the bowl to crack and break. So that's one of the most common mistakes we see consumers making when it comes to using the plastic beater bowl with the single wire whips for making cookies. So just mix your dry ingredients on the lowest speed, mix just until it's incorporated, and then turn it off, and you should be good to go. Now your other set of beaters that you're going to get with your basic package, and we're just gonna pop these off. They come off super easy for easy cleaning. The gear comes apart completely. Now remember, when you take this apart to clean it, make sure you don't lose this gear. Make sure it goes back in, because though the machine will work without that gear, your beaters will not properly whisk if that gear is not in place. So we've got our gear, and now we have our multi-wire balloon whisks. These whisks are going to be for egg whites, whipping cream, a very, very light icing, things that you're wanting to aerate. Angel food cake is very popular here in the US, and that uses a lot of egg whites, and it's a very fluffy, very light cake batter. So you could totally do that with this. Just remember, if your cake batter calls for softened butter that you're going to cream together with sugar, you need to be using the single wire beaters or the main bowl with your roller and your scraper. So you never want to use these multi-wire whisks for anything heavier than egg whites, whipping cream, maybe a pancake batter, but nothing really heavier than that. So that's gonna be your multi-wire balloon whisks, your single wire beaters, and your BPA-free Triton plastic beater bowl. We also have now an optional accessory where you can purchase a stainless steel version of the beater bowl. I don't have one here with me today. Oh, I did want to show you one thing really quick. We're going to put this back on. The bowl lid that fits on your stainless steel bowl also fits on your plastic bowl. So when you are whipping egg whites or whipping cream or making your own butter, which is super fun to actually over whip your whipping cream and make your own butter, being able to put the lid on for that process is fantastic so that you don't have liquid splashing out into your kitchen. So the lid does fit both bowls. But what I was mentioning was we have a stainless steel beater bowl option. Now, a lot of consumers are like, oh, perfect, I will get that, and I'll be able to make heavier cookie dough in the stainless steel beater bowl. The problem with that thinking is that you're still dealing with the same beater assembly. So even if you purchase the stainless steel beater bowl, I still would follow the same guidelines for making cookie dough, even in that, because you're still dealing with the whisk assembly and the single wire beaters. So what do we do for heavier cookie dough? What do you do with large batches of cakes, buttercream frosting, things like that? Now, remember I mentioned in the very beginning of our live stream that from 1940 till at least 1990, when the Ankarsrum first came into the US, the dough roller and the dough scraper was really the only mixing attachment. I think there was at some point some type of beater assembly that you could use, but for the most part, and especially in the very beginning, this is the only bowl and mixing tool that Swedish families had to use. And so you can use this for pretty much everything. Cakes, cookies, bread dough, pie crust, mixing meatloaf, sausage meat, any of those things can be done with the dough roller and the dough scraper. In our masterclass cookie video, I actually show you the proper way to cream butter and sugar using the main bowl with the dough roller and the dough scraper. But I'll go through those tips really quickly for you. I'm going to switch views so you can see overhead. So when you're creaming butter and sugar in the main bowl with the roller and scraper, you're going to position the roller just slightly off the side of the bowl because you don't want that rubber wheel rubbing against the side of the bowl. Because what you're going to do is you're actually going to run the machine on a very high speed. I'm going to show you real quick and then we're going to turn it off. So on that super high speed, what's happening is you're still going to use, let me back up, you're still going to use completely soft room temperature butter, because if you try to use cold butter here, because of our spring-loaded arm, the arm's just going to bounce with that cold butter. So using completely soft room temperature butter and running the machine on a very high speed. And when I say high, I'm talking like 6 o'clock to 8 o'clock, which 8 o'clock is the highest speed. So anywhere between 6 and 8 o'clock, you're going to run the mixer and let it start creaming and whipping that softened butter. Let it get creaming, then add part of your sugar, let it continue to cream, add the rest of your sugar. This shouldn't take more than a minute, so it's not taking very long to do this. You may need to turn off the machine, scrape any collected butter off of your dough roller that might have collected there. You might need to scrape it off 1 or 2 times, but then as soon as you turn the mixer back on, it will continue to cream and whip that butter and sugar, and it just does a beautiful job. You can also make marshmallows in the stainless steel beater bowl with the roller and scraper. It's completely heat safe, so you can pour boiling sugar syrup in here. You can make your different types of Italian buttercream frosting, Italian meringue buttercream frosting, all of those that use a boiling sugar syrup poured over whipped egg whites. You can do all of that here. You can do a large batch of egg whites with the roller and the scraper, and also a large amount of heavy cream as well for making whipped cream, or continuing to over whip and make your own homemade butter using the roller and scraper. So definitely check out that masterclass video on making cookies in the 2 different bowls, because we do them actually side by side, so you can totally see the different tips and the tricks and all of that sort of thing. So do we have any questions up to this point?
Yes. Let's see. Someone wants to know which parts are you allowed to put in the dishwasher?
That is a great question. So dishwasher safe. Now here's the thing that I know, it is very different. Dishwashers here in the United States are very different from dishwashers in Europe and in Sweden in particular. And our water quality also here in the United States differs drastically from state to state, even city to city. So here in the States, I actually recommend just hand washing everything. I know that it's very common for Swedish dishwashers, European dishwashers to not have a heat element. And so in your owner's manual, it will actually tell you exactly which parts are dishwasher safe. Stainless steel bowl is dishwasher safe. I believe the dough hook is dishwasher safe. I think in the owner's manual it says that the plastic beater bowl is dishwasher safe, but that's one of the things here in the US that I do not recommend putting the bowl in the dishwasher. Excuse me. Just because of the different types of water quality that we have here. Dish soaps can also range in how harsh they are. And then our heating elements also can deform your plastic beater bowl if it goes through the heat cycle and then completely cools. If you're not careful, it can deform the bowl. I know because mine accidentally got put in the dishwasher and now it has a little bit of a flat side edge on one side. Still works great and I still use it every day, but it accidentally made it into the dishwasher. So went through that heating cycle. So, but your owner's manual will tell you everything. Just keep that in mind if you are in the United States, that just keep in mind water quality, heating elements in dishwashers, and the harshness of some of our detergents. I prefer to just hand wash everything for those reasons. Any other questions?
When my dough forms a ball, it moves the handle a lot. Should I move the roller closer to the center?
Okay, so if you have, if your particular recipe that once you add all of the dry ingredients, all the flour, it forms a ball rather quickly, my recommendation is position the arm in the roller so that it's applying gentle pressure to the dough, but turn your speed down to somewhere between 12, maybe 2 o'clock at the highest. At that lower speed, you can allow the arm to move gently with the dough because it's mimicking that hand kneading motion. So it's okay for the dough to be moving the arm back and forth as long as it's doing it at a very low speed. So totally fine to let the arm move because you definitely don't want to over tighten your tension knob and really crank this down. I'm still trying to figure out the right terminology to use when we write recipes and we say, you know, position the arm in the roller 2 inches or 4 centimeters or whatever away from the side of the bowl and lock it in place. The biggest thing is to remember is you're really not locking the arm because it can still freely move to the center. So another misconception is that you as the consumer need to crank down super tight on your tension knob. You don't want to over tighten that. The arm is designed to still freely move. So if you want the arm to move with your dough, just make sure you're kneading at a much lower speed so it has that gentle kneading motion. Hope that answers your question.
Okay, and then my dough often splits into 2 different pieces while being kneaded, and the 2 pieces do not coalesce. I'm so sorry, I don't know that word. I'm so sorry.
Let's see.
Coalesce.
Oh, okay. Okay, so that's okay. So the dough's coming apart while you're kneading. Most likely because of how the dough is moving, the dough knife can actually move back and forth also with the dough. So what's probably happening is that your dough is sticking to the dough knife, and as it moves, it's pulling the dough knife away from the side of the bowl. I'm going to change the view here. So the dough's coming from behind the roller, coming in contact with the dough knife, and if it's a stickier dough in particular, as the dough continues to travel, it's going to pull the dough knife away, and then the next time the dough comes behind, if the dough knife is way out here, some of it's going to go behind and it's going to cut it in half. I really wouldn't worry about it too much. I really wouldn't, because even if it's split into 2 different pieces, as long as those 2 pieces are going between the roller and the side of the bowl, it's kneading it and it should be totally fine. You might just play around with the speed that you're kneading at to make sure if it's going too fast, that the stickier dough is slamming into the dough knife and then pulling the dough knife away from the side of the bowl. You might just want to turn the speed down a little bit. One common thing that I see a lot of times, because those other stand mixers on the market don't truly have a really low speed like the Ankarsrum does, we have grown accustomed to mixing and kneading at a much higher speed. And so you might just play around with slowing the speed down. That might actually help your dough stay together better. So that would be my suggestion. What else we got?
Then the next question was, so you had talked about dishwasher safe stuff. Is the stainless steel beater bowl safe?
The stainless steel beater bowl is dishwasher safe. There is a rubber ring on the bottom, like a rubber gasket on the bottom of the bowl. We do recommend just popping that out before you put the bowl in the dishwasher and then putting it back into place. So that's our recommendation for putting it in the dishwasher. You just don't want that rubber gasket to go into the dishwasher. And that rubber gasket is on the bottom and it protects it because it's sitting right on the mixer base. We don't want to scratch the base.
I have been told to use a little less fluid when making dough. Is there a percentage as a guideline, and is there any downside to adding in a bit later in the process?
So there's nothing wrong with adding a little bit more water or oil or whatever your liquid is into your recipe. There is a lot of information out there that says the Ankarsrum does not require as much flour as maybe what you're used to using. So let me explain where that information is coming from. So remember, we talked earlier about your traditional stand mixer has a stationary bowl and stationary ingredients, and then the hook is doing that swirly triangular pattern, picking up the ingredients. So a traditional stand mixer with a traditional hook does require a certain level of stiffness to be able to form a ball and then knead that ball of dough by grabbing and slapping against the side of the bowl. So a traditional mixer with a traditional hook, grabbing, slapping, grabbing, slapping. With the Ankarsrum, however, the dough roller and the dough scraper don't necessarily require that certain level of stiffness to be able to knead the dough, because the dough roller is kneading the dough against the side of the bowl. So it's more pressing is how it's kneading versus grabbing and slapping, grabbing and slapping. So you can sometimes get away with using a little bit less flour with the dough roller and the dough scraper. And the same is true for liquids. You can sometimes get away with using a little bit less liquids with the dough roller and the dough scraper. But if you have a recipe that is by weight, so it calls for a certain number of ounces or milliliters of liquid and a certain weight in grams of flour, absolutely use it exactly how the recipe is written. Just understand that if the dough does come together and form a ball right from the very beginning, you're going to need to make an adjustment with your arm and your roller and with your speed to knead at a slower, lower speed for that stiffer ball of dough. And then, like we talked about earlier, the Ankarsrum dough hook is not designed at all like a traditional dough hook. So whereas a traditional dough hook has to have a certain level of stiffness to be able to knead by grabbing and slapping, the dough hook for the Ankarsrum actually kneads by stretching the dough. And so if it's a very low hydration, very stiff dough, sometimes the dough hook on the Ankarsrum doesn't work as well because the ingredients just get stuck here against the dough hook and never really mix in. And so just use the recipes in our recipe book as a guide, and definitely go back and watch those 2 masterclass videos on the dough hook and the dough roller so that you can see the type of dough that works really well. And I know that one question that we've had recently is, will you do a video showing a low hydration dough like a traditional bagel dough, and show what you mean by that using the dough roller and scraper? And that is something that we will absolutely do in the future. So hopefully that explains where that whole, where that comment comes from of, oh, the Ankarsrum doesn't require as much flour as other stand mixers. it's a machine, and it doesn't care how much flour you use. It just doesn't, you just don't have to have a certain level of stiffness for the Ankarsrum to be able to knead, because it does knead so differently than traditional mixers. So hopefully that explains that. What else we got? Anything? And what's our time?
It is 2:05.
Okay, we are gonna go ahead and sign off. Wanted to keep this really short and sweet, but if you are watching this on the replay, or if later on you think of another question that we did not cover, please go back and comment on Instagram. We've got another question coming in.
Really quick, can you explain exactly where they can find this, like the rewatch?
Yes.
And then they want you to go over again where to locate the masterclass videos.
Okay, so masterclass videos are on our YouTube channel, both on Ankarsrum Assistant YouTube channel, which is the official Swedish YouTube channel, or on Ankarsrum USA's YouTube channel. They're listed, both of them are there. If you go to YouTube and you search Ankarsrum Masterclass, then you should see them. I know we also have several copies of them with subtitles in other languages, so you can check those out. That's where the masterclasses live, is on YouTube. And then to rewatch this live Q&A, it will, as soon as we hit end stream, it will be on Ankarsrum USA's YouTube channel, because we went ahead and streamed it there today. And then we will archive it and repost it on Ankarsrum's Instagram account. So it will be posted later on. But if you have any other questions, feel free to reach out. The email address for the Ankarsrum customer support in Sweden is info@ankarsrum.com. If you are a US customer, then you will reach out to my office, and that email address is info-us@ankarsrum.com. But you can go onto YouTube and you can type your comments or questions there. And then, like I said, we will repost this onto our Instagram account. And if you have any additional questions, you can post them there, or just send it to us in an email. One other resource that I want to offer to you is that if you have questions while you're using your machine and you're not quite sure if it's functioning properly, or you have a question about your dough that you're unsure of, a video always helps. So if you are asking customer support in Sweden, or you're asking customer support here in the US, take a short video on your phone, send it to us and say, hey, does this look right? Am I doing this right? Is this the right speed? Is this the right arm placement? Because we totally understand that this is a completely different design than what you might be used to. So we are absolutely always willing to help answer those questions. So anything else? Are we good?
No.
Okay, we are going to go ahead and sign off. Thank you so much for joining us this evening, for all of you in Sweden and Europe. And if any of our US customers are watching on our YouTube channel, thank you so much for taking some time out of your afternoon, and we will see you again in the future.